All right, welcome everyone to another deep dive. And today we've got, well, you guys gave us a fascinating challenge.
Yeah, this one's unique.
It is, it is. We're going to try to figure out why YouTuber Dwaine Woolley decided not to join the Iglesia Ni Cristo.
After a whole year of exploring their faith.
Exactly, a whole year. So not just, a quick glance. He was really trying to figure out if this was for him. We've got his video testimony. And for anyone who might not know, INC is a Christian denomination that's really especially influential in the Philippines.
Yeah. What's so interesting about this deep dive is that we're not looking at like a typical conversion story.
Right.
It's a decision to not join.
To not join. And I think there's a lot we can learn from that. The almost converted, what made them say, this isn't for me.
Yeah, what's that tipping point?
Yeah. So to set the stage a bit, Woolley spent a year studying with INC, even attended services for 6 months.
Wow, he really immersed himself.
Yeah, he did. And what's fascinating is he doesn't paint INC in a negative light at all.
No, not at all.
In fact, he starts his video by emphasizing all the things he appreciated.
Yeah, their dedication to good works, charitable activities, that strong sense of community, that definitely resonated with him.
Yeah, and he even mentions being impressed by the church's structure, their organization, which I can see being appealing.
Oh, absolutely. That sense of order, purpose, that can be very comforting for some.
Yeah, finding your place. But, and here's where things get really interesting. He says, despite these positives, certain doctrines, how they interpreted the Bible, it just didn't sit right with him.
Look at that internal struggle, personal conviction versus obedience to religious authority.
It's a tension a lot of people face, I think.
For sure. Trying to reconcile what you believe with what you're being taught.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one of the specific things he mentions is INC's practice of block voting in the Philippines.
Ah, that's where the church leadership tells members who to vote for.
Exactly. And it seems like Woolley, who really values individual choice, that was a tough one for him. Like having his vote dictated, even if he agreed with the candidate.
It raises those bigger questions too, right? The role of religion in a democracy. How much influence should a religious organization have?
Huge questions. Where's that line between faith and freedom? Woolley's experience kind of forces us to confront those.
It does, and it's a reminder that even within organized religion, personal conviction can clash with the expectations of the group.
It's a balancing act, and for him, INC just didn't strike that balance.
Yeah, it wasn't the right fit. But what's refreshing is he doesn't present it as this rejection of faith altogether.
No, not at all.
He's still on a journey, searching for a path that resonates more deeply.
Which makes you wonder, what were those key things that pushed him away? He talks about a conversation he had with an INC member about block voting, how that member tried to justify it using a verse from Philippians.
Interesting. And did he agree with the interpretation?
He felt it was a stretch, which kind of points to a broader issue he had with how INC interprets the Bible, like maybe choosing specific verses to support their doctrines rather than letting the whole thing speak for itself.
Picking and choosing.
Yeah, right. And he brought these concerns up with someone he calls Brother D, presumably a leader in the church.
I see.
But instead of getting a real explanation, he was basically told, the Holy Spirit will guide you.
Not very satisfying for someone who's clearly looking for concrete answers.
Not at all. He's a thinking guy, wants to understand the why.
Right.
And there's this really powerful moment where he talks about fairness.
Yeah, I remember that.
He asks, is it fair for God to only offer salvation through one specific church? He believes God is just, fair, not limiting salvation to one group.
It's a theological dilemma a lot of people grapple with. If God's truly just, how can he restrict salvation?
Right. And this ties back to block voting. If INC is the only true church and members are expected to vote as a block, it implies everyone else is somehow less worthy.
I see the connection.
Which, to him, contradicts a just and loving God.
Yeah, that creates a real dissonance.
Exactly. Then he brings up this comparison. INC's block voting and the story of Jesus being tempted in the desert.
Oh, that's an interesting parallel.
Right? Jesus is tempted with worldly power, dominion, but rejects it.
Emphasizing a separation of spiritual and worldly authority.
Exactly. And Woolley seems to be suggesting that INC, by getting involved in politics through block voting, goes against that example.
Muddying the waters.
Yeah. And it's not just about the act of voting itself. He worries about the implications. Corruption, leaders putting their own interests first.
The potential for abuse of power, yeah.
Exactly. And he even mentions a risk of members being manipulated, exploited, in a system where obedience is so highly valued.
It can make it hard to speak up. challenge authority.
For sure. And here's where his own experience within INC comes in. He shares instances where he felt members were pressured to contribute financially, even when it caused them hardship.
Oh, wow. So a culture of fear, maybe.
Yeah. And guilt, like questioning leadership, was a sign of weak faith.
That's a lot to carry.
It is.
Yeah.
Now, he's not saying all INC members feel this way or are mistreated, but this was his experience.
His truth, his journey.
Right, right. And it's a perspective that challenges us to think critically about faith, belonging, the role religion plays.
Absolutely. It prompts us to examine our own beliefs, the systems we participate in.
So we've got these deep concerns about block voting, the church's justification not really doing it for him, even drawing a parallel to Jesus rejecting worldly power. But were there other aspects of INC that made him question things?
Yes, there were a few other points he brought up that seemed to solidify his decision. One that stands out is the church's emphasis on good works as a necessary component of salvation. He even mentions a specific verse, 1 Corinthians 14:40, which he believes they use to support this doctrine.
Interesting. So not that he disagrees with doing good deeds, but he struggles with the idea that they're essential for salvation.
Yeah, like, is it fair to say someone's salvation hinges on their actions? Especially given that people have such different opportunities to do good.
It raises questions about accessibility, privilege,
Exactly.
which are pretty important when you're talking about salvation.
For sure. And it all circles back to his concerns about the church's interpretation of the Bible, emphasizing certain verses while downplaying others.
Like, let's look at the whole picture, not just the parts that fit the narrative.
Right. It speaks to his honesty, his commitment to aligning his faith with his own moral compass.
Yeah, like he's saying, my faith isn't about blindly following. It's about actively seeking truth, even if it means challenging what I'm told.
That's powerful, a proactive approach to faith.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that suggests that true faith shouldn't be about rigid rules.
No.
It's about continuously seeking, questioning, deepening our understanding.
It's a journey,
Yeah.
not a destination.
And Woolley's journey with INC, even though it led him away, it demonstrates that it does. It shows that sometimes those difficult choices, they bring us closer to our own truth.
Even if it means letting go of something we once held dear.
And he's not framing it as this rejection of faith itself. He's very clear. He's still on a quest.
Still searching.
Yeah, for a path that truly speaks to him.
It's like his experience with INC, even though it was challenging, it was a stage in his evolution.
It helped him refine what he believes, what he doesn't,
Yeah.
what he values.
What he wants in a spiritual community.
It was a process of elimination, in a way.
He learned what didn't work, which gets him closer to what might.
And what's really interesting is he doesn't portray this as a rejection of Christianity, even of INC itself.
No, he's very careful about that.
He actually says he still considers it a good Christian religion,
Really?
believes it can have a positive impact.
So recognizing that what works for one might not work for another.
Right. No one-size-fits-all when it comes to faith.
Exactly.
He even says he believes INC can help make bad men good and good men better.
So he sees the good in it, even though it wasn't for him.
Absolutely. And that shows a nuance you don't always hear in these discussions.
Yeah, it's easy to get into that black and white thinking with religion, right? This is good, that's bad.
But Woolley reminds us it's complex.
It is. Everyone's journey is multifaceted.
And we got to respect that.
We do.
Now, there's this other point he brings up, might seem a bit off topic at first, but it connects to his bigger concerns. He mentions INC's rule about separating men and women during services.
Oh, interesting. Why did that bother him?
He doesn't explicitly say, but it seems to be another example of where he feels like the church might be taking a verse out of context to justify a practice.
Using the Bible to support a rule.
Yeah, based on their understanding of 1 Corinthians 14:40, which emphasizes order in worship. But is that really what God intended?
Or is it a human-made rule imposed in the name of tradition or control?
Right, and that question of control, it comes up again and again in his analysis.
He seems concerned about the church's structure, obedience to leadership, how that can stifle individual thought.
Yeah, like respect authority, sure. But don't lose your ability to think for yourself.
That balance is so important.
It is. And this ties back to block voting, their political involvement. It fits this pattern where he sees the church potentially overstepping boundaries.
Dictating aspects of members' lives that should be left to individual choice.
Like he's saying faith should empower, not control.
That's a powerful message, especially in a world where religious institutions often hold so much power.
It's about being critical, even within your own faith community.
Don't be afraid to question what doesn't feel right.
Listen to that inner voice.
That gut feeling.
Exactly. And that resonates with everyone, regardless of your beliefs.
It does. It's that human need for autonomy.
To think for ourselves.
To make choices that align with our values.
And Woolley's parting message, I think, is really beautiful. He says, the door is always open.
He's not closing himself off to the possibility of return.
Finding another path.
Yeah, acknowledging that spiritual journeys are fluid.
We're constantly growing, changing.
And it's okay to shift, to seek newer paths.
It's not about having it all figured out.
It's the journey.
And it's a testament to grace, compassion.
Even though he's choosing to leave, he does so with respect.
Recognizes the good INC offers.
But it wasn't the right fit for him.
Honoring that diversity of human experience.
Exactly.
So we've really delved into Woolley's experience, his reasoning. But I'm curious about this block voting thing.
Yeah.
Is this common? Is it unique to INC?
It's a good question. Block voting isn't unique to INC, but they are known for it.
And it brings up a lot of questions, right? Like, is it ethical for a religious institution to direct votes?
That's tricky.
Does it undermine the individual's right to choose?
It touches upon religious freedom, individual rights, separation of church and state, big issues.
Yeah, that tension between the right to practice your religion and the potential for that to infringe on someone else's rights.
Where do we draw the line?
Exactly. And in the Philippines, where INC has such influence, these questions are really important.
They are. And, while we're focusing on INC, these questions apply to any group that engages in block voting.
Labor unions, professional organizations, advocacy groups.
All trying to leverage their power.
It's a strategy, and it has ethical implications.
It does. What are the benefits, the drawbacks? How do we protect individual rights?
So much to think about. Woolley's story gives us a lot to chew on. We've mainly focused on his side of things, but I think it's important to look at how INC views this practice. What are their arguments for it? How do they address these concerns about coercion?
That's a great point. We need to hear the other side of the story.
Yeah, what are their justifications? How do they reconcile these practices with their beliefs? And that's where we'll pick up next time.
Sounds good. And it wasn't like a complete rejection,
No, not at all.
He didn't say like Christianity is wrong or INC's evil or anything.
Right. He actually says he still considers it a good Christian religion and that it can have a positive impact.
So he's acknowledging that it might work for some people.
Right. No one size fits all, as they say.
Exactly.
And he even goes so far as to say that he believes INC can help make bad men good and good men better.
So he sees the potential for good.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what I find so interesting about his perspective. It's nuanced.
It is. You don't often hear that.
Right. It's easy to get into like black and white thinking with religion.
Good versus bad.
Yeah, yeah. But he's reminding us it's complex.
It is. Everyone's journey is different.
And we need to respect that.
We do.
And I love his parting message in the video. He says, the door is always open.
Oh, that's nice.
It's like he's walking away for now.
But not closing yourself off completely.
Right. Maybe he'll find another path that fits better.
It's acknowledging that we're always growing, always changing.
And that's okay.
It's okay to shift, to seek new paths.
We don't have to have it all figured out.
It's about the journey.
It really is. And I think it speaks to grace,
He does.
He's leaving, but he's doing it with respect.
Recognizing the good that's there.
Yeah.
But it wasn't for him.
And that's fine. There's beauty in that, I think.
Absolutely. Honoring that diversity of experience.
So last time, we were talking about how INC views this whole block voting thing. And the blogs we found defending it, I got to say, they're pretty passionate.
Yeah, they really see it as this act of unity, a way to show their faith.
Of following God's will.
Exactly. And it gives them a stronger voice, a bigger impact on politics.
One blog, Lying Pat, Iglesia Ni Cristo, they even say it protects members from corrupt politicians.
Interesting. So by standing together, they're less likely to be swayed.
Yeah, like a shield against those empty promises, the bribes.
Makes sense.
And they emphasize that the church leadership doesn't just pick candidates randomly.
They do their research.
Yeah, they vet them,
Yeah.
looking for people who will serve the country and the INC community.
So it's not blind obedience. It's more like informed collective action.
Right. Guided by the church's wisdom, their discernment.
They even say members aren't forced to vote a certain way, but they're encouraged to trust the church's guidance.
Right, right. It's like they're presenting it as responsible civic engagement.
Participating in democracy, but on their own terms.
Staying true to their values. But then you have those criticisms, right? The coercion, the blurring of lines between church and state.
Right. How do they address those?
They actually push back pretty hard against those accusations of meddling.
They don't see it that way.
No. They say they're not trying to control the government, just exercising their right to vote.
As a group?
Yeah, just like any other group. They point out that other organizations do it too.
Unions, professional groups.
Right. And they don't get the same kind of scrutiny.
They feel like they're being singled out because they're religious.
It's interesting, right? You have Dwaine Woolley wrestling with his vote being dictated, and then you have these blogs saying it's actually a way to protect members, to use their power for good.
It's two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. Different ways of understanding the same thing.
Shows how complex this whole issue is.
It does. So where does that leave us? We've got these passionate arguments for and against block voting. What have we learned from this deep dive?
Well, I think what stands out to me is how this story really shows us where faith, politics, and individual conscience all intersect.
They're all tangled up.
They are. And sometimes making those tough choices, that's what helps us understand our own values.
Like Woolley could have just gone along with what he was being taught.
Right. But he didn't.
He dug deeper, asked the tough questions.
And ultimately made a choice that felt true to him.
And that's what we should all do, right? Have those tough conversations, examine what we believe.
Don't be afraid to challenge things, even if it's uncomfortable.
We've covered a lot today. Woolley's story, the arguments around block voting, the bigger picture.
It's a lot to think about.
It is.
Yeah.
But the main takeaway for me is the importance of critical thinking, questioning what we're told.
Having those respectful dialogues.
Being open to different viewpoints.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, making choices that align with our own values.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Keep exploring, keep researching, and as always, keep diving.